Hi, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webcast. We'll get started in just a moment, so hang in there. We'll start in about 2 minutes. Thank you. Hello, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to today's webinar with OPSWAT and F5 preventing cyber attacks on web applications. My name is Mark Campbell and I am with F5 on the security team. I'm joined by George Pritchie, Director of Product Management at OPSWAT, and we're very happy to have you join us here today. A couple of things I want to bring up before we get started, some housekeeping items. If you have any questions during the webinar, we have some time set aside at the end to answer your questions. However, we'll be monitoring the questions throughout, so if we see something that looks particularly relevant or that we can weave in, we'll go ahead and address that, but we will be saving some time at the end for some Q&A, so go ahead and enter your questions. There is a tab in your portal there to add in questions. At the end of the webinar, please take a moment to rate the presentation, provide us some feedback. You'll see a tab below the player where you can enter your feedback, so we really would appreciate your feedback on this. There's also some additional resources to check out, so feel free to download those at any time. A recording of this webcast will be available using the same URL that you used to access the site. So if for any reason you missed some of it and you want to catch up on it later, or you want to share it with someone, go ahead and use that same URL. Also, we will have 2 polling questions in today's webcast. So we really encourage your participation in that so you can see how your answers compare with the rest of the audience. So we're really excited about those, some interesting questions for you. And with that said, we'd like to go ahead and get started with the webinar. So when we look at our agenda, we're going to talk about a few things with regards to web application security. We're going to talk about the most critical web application security risks, a little bit about the OWASP Top 10. Hopefully you guys are familiar with that, and if not, we'll bring it up to date. We'll talk about how you can protect against these risks. In particular, we want to talk about file-borne threats on web applications. We'll go through some best practices for preventing these attacks. And then finally, we'll spend a little bit of time talking about F5 and OPSWAT and our joint solution. So George is going to do a great demo for us as well so you can see this in action. And as I mentioned, we'll do some Q&A at the end. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. First, I'm going to turn it over to George, and so he can tell you a little bit about OPSWAT.
Thank you, Mark. So OPSWAT has been founded like 15 years ago, actually in 2002. One of our very first products was a framework called OASIS that's leveraged by a lot of companies, including F5, and that's how we actually bootstrapped our company, but also our partnership with F5. Then we built a lot more, and the most important product and the one we're going to talk today is MetaDefender, which is advanced threat prevention technology. And that's the one that we have like a lot of development on, and that's the one actually that drives the main revenue for the company right now. We have over 1,000 customers, worldwide presence. The offices, 8 offices worldwide. We offer like 24/7 support, and I think that's the main key here. That we're relying a lot on technology partners. We have like over 300 technology partners, and we're trying to build this entire security ecosystem. And this is where we come in, and we're trying to be, like an add-on to a lot of technologies, in this case, collaboration with F5. Mark? Mark, I think you're muted.
Yeah, thank you. So F5's been around for about 20 years. Hopefully you're familiar with us. You're probably familiar with our market-leading load balancing solutions, and that's really where F5 made its mark. However, as many of you already know, F5 has a full array of application protection solutions, and this includes solutions that guard against denial of service. It also has SSL visibility and orchestration tools, access management, and web application firewalls. And web application firewalls is largely part of our topic today, so happy to tell you a little bit more about that. So let's go ahead and get to the meat of what we're talking about here, and a little bit about the OPSWAT partnership as well. And F5 is extremely pleased to be a partner with OPSWAT. Our partnership goes back more than 10 years. Starting when F5 utilized the OPSWAT technology to conduct endpoint posture checks for our remote access controls. And since then, the partnership has really evolved to incorporate some of the newer OPSWAT technology, and OPSWAT has been a strategic partner in the F5 Technology Alliance program, or the TAP program, since 2015. So we think that we have a really great joint solution that is vitally important to help our customers address some of the real security concerns with regards to protecting web applications. And we're going to get into this today, but before we do that, we're going to go ahead and start off with a little bit of details about some of the critical aspects of web application security and why this can be such a challenge. So we'll go ahead and get to that, but before we do that, we'll go ahead and start with our first polling question, and we'll go ahead and put this up for you. So hold on just a moment. So the polling question is, how do you protect your web applications today? And with the answers being dynamic application scanning and remediation, web application firewall, code review, you're doing all of these things, or no additional safeguards. So go ahead and you should see that showing up here. Now you should see the list on your right below your portal. So we'll keep that open for about a minute or so. So go ahead and take a look at that, and you should start seeing the results show up in real time here. So feel free to go ahead and select your vote. We see them coming in. But as you do your votes, we'll continue to move on, and we'll turn it over to George to talk a little bit about the OWASP Top 10. Go ahead, George.
Thank you, Mark. I think the most important part is the fact that we have OWASP, like non-profit organizations, trying to put together a list of most prevalent web application security risks, or what kind of attacks we're seeing nowadays, right? And this is something that they're usually presenting every 3 years. This time they took a little bit longer from 2013. They announced one in 2017. But the entire idea is that these are the type of attacks that you're seeing very often, and some of them are actually a little bit hard to mitigate. Some of them are not even necessarily type of attacks, but they are, again, risks for your web application. So, for instance, an example, the last one in 2017, the insufficient logging and monitoring, that's something that you need to have in place in order for you to actually be able to know what's going on with your web application. At the end of the day, think about security in your own organization, right? You need to know what's going on in your network. The same thing you want to know a lot more with your web application. Now, one of the things that I want to touch base for all top 10, we're not going to go through all of them at the end of the day, but I think one of the most important parts is that we have, for instance, injection as one of the main for years now, right? Like it was the first one in 2013, most prevalent one in 2013. It's still in 2017. You have a lot of attacks based on SQL injection and so on. That's an easy way to get in and actually have access to sensitive data, right? Think about the fact that you can actually go ahead and access a lot of information pretty much through the entire database. And this is something that, at the end of the day, it's a huge risk, and this is one of the main ones for data breaches. Now, with that in mind, a lot of the industry is moving towards trying to secure what OWASP is trying to represent, right? So at the end of the day, we're going to try to put together as much as possible policies, different frameworks, different release processes, cycles that we spend there to make sure that we're going to mitigate as much as possible from the perspective like releasing code that has those vulnerabilities or risks embedded in it. And this is something that, yes, if you're going to put a WAF in front of it, you're going to be able to prevent all these attacks, or like mostly, most of them actually, because at the end of the day, it's not the WAF's responsibility to make sure that you're logging and monitoring your application. But again, the most important part is that the WAF is going to be able to prevent, let's say, the SQL injections part of the attacks, but at the end of the day, that shouldn't be an excuse for your developers to actually build or like create and put actually on the security side of the code, right? You need to have like the security mindset for the web developers as well whenever they're building the code to make sure that those risks are going to be part of the code they're building. And perhaps one of the most important part there is also the fact that we need a lot more collaboration, right? At the end of the day, the web developers are focusing on delivering features, delivering functionalities that are appealing. User experience most probably is the most important part. For the UI people, you have like a lot of backend that they're focusing way more on scalability and so on. But the most important part, they need to have that security mindset embedded in everything they're building. Okay, and as I was mentioning, injection is still one of the, it's still #1 in the top 10. And this is something that it's not easy to mitigate, but it's something where deploying a WAF in front of your web application, is definitely going to help.
Right. Thanks, George. And yeah, it's surprising to me to see that injection remains the #1, and I think that speaks to the fact that, as George mentioned, it's a difficult problem to solve, and there's always seemed to be some injection vulnerabilities in web applications as they're developed. So just one quick note here, we'll be closing the voting on our first polling question in just a few seconds or so. So if you haven't put your vote in, go ahead and put that now. So again, the question is, how do you protect your web applications today? Dynamic application scanning and remediation, web application firewall, code review, all the above, or you don't do anything today. So we'll just close that down in about 10 more seconds or so, and then we'll talk the results. So let's talk a little bit about WAF. Now, George mentioned that using a WAF or deploying a WAF is a great way to defend against the OWASP top 10. And WAFs are perhaps the most efficient way to address these top vulnerabilities. As you may already know, a WAF sits between the application and the users, and this really enables the WAF to inspect all that traffic going to the application. So while it's inspecting that traffic, it can detect and block the attacks before they even reach the application, and that's very important, is to be able to stop the applications before they have the opportunity to stop the threats. Before they have the opportunity to touch the applications. And WAF is fairly widely deployed now with most organizations, and because it's very efficient. And what makes this so efficient is that it doesn't require any additional development on the application itself. So it can address many of the vulnerabilities without having to take the application offline for updates or maintenance, and it can make up for many of the security shortcomings in the application development cycle. Now, George mentioned there's no excuse for poor development, but certainly the use of a web application firewall can help make up for some of those errors as well. And also, we've seen more and more that WAFs are used to help in compliance efforts, especially when used for PCI compliance. So there's a section in the PCI compliance that specifically calls out the use of WAFs. So let's talk a little bit about F5's WAF, and then we'll turn it back over to George. So WAFs there's plenty of them out there, and most of the WAFs in the market do a pretty good job against the OWASP top 10. But not all WAFs are the same, right? And F5 has really spent a lot of our time really thinking about what we could do better and how we could make a WAF even more efficient. So we have released what we call the F5 Advanced WAF. So not only does it cover the OWASP Top 10 and do the SSL and TLS inspection and protect against scripting attacks, but we've also added in some real capabilities to defend against bots. And if we look at the amount of traffic on the internet, many estimates have it well over half of the traffic is created by bots, and not all of these bots are good. In fact, most of them are not good. Right? So being able to detect, is there a bot, is this bot allowed, and what is this bot trying to do, is hugely important. We've also added in some credential protection. Now this is twofold. One is about credential stuffing, and credential stuffing is where, as you've probably seen in the news, where accounts get breached and hundreds of thousands of usernames and passwords are stolen. Attackers will take those usernames and passwords and try them in all these other applications to see if they can get access. This is known as credential stuffing, by being able to take these known exposed passwords and use them in other applications. So F5 Advanced WAF protects against that. We have access to those same usernames and passwords that have been leaked and can detect when those are trying to be used. But what's also very cool about what F5 is doing with the Advanced WAF is the application layer DOS protection. So this is a real layer 7, and this is when you think about all of the technology that F5 has with its application delivery and application health capabilities, and being able to apply that to understand if an application is under stress and what is causing that stress, and being able to address that at the WAF. And it's some of the same technology that we use in our anti-DDoS product at the layer 7 as well, we've incorporated into the WAF. So not only can the WAF defend against some of the common OWASP Top 10, defend against the credential attacks and bots, but also some of these attacks are a little bit harder to detect. They're really draining the application resources and causing a denial of service. Okay, from there, we've got one more polling question, so I will stop this polling question for you, and let's look at the results. And I'm pleased to say that about 40% say you're doing all of it, so that's great. It's very nice to see that everybody's doing at least one thing, right? So no one selected the no additional safeguards. About 25% of you doing the application scanning and remediation. It's a great tool, and it should be part of your best practice to be doing that. Your web application firewalls are great, but it's still you still have some best practices that should do application scanning on a regular interval. Code review, only about 15%. A little bit lower than I suspected. George, any comments on our poll results?
No, actually, one I want to emphasize as well is the fact that a lot of people are using all of the above. So the security practices are pretty much well defined out there. A lot of people are trying to apply it, and hats off to that.
Well, great. We have one more question for you, and this is directly related to the next part of our presentation. And we'll go ahead and push that out to you now. We'll go ahead and start the voting. And let's get to it. So polling question, do you offer file uploads on your web applications? So the question is, do you offer file uploads on your web applications? Yes, no, we have no need, no, it's too risky, we're considering it, or I don't know. And I'll tell you, I was at Black Hat a few weeks ago, and this was something that came up quite a bit. We had a lot of visitors come and visit us at the F5 booth, and this was something that came up quite often, where attendees at the show were saying, hey, we have web applications, we make file uploads available to end users, and we're really concerned about how we can protect these. So this is something that is a real concern for many people, and we'd like to see what you think about this and what you're doing here. And then we'll get to our results in just a moment. So we'll leave this open for a couple of minutes as the votes start to come in, and then we'll move along as well. And so we'll talk a little bit about some of the what's happening, what we're seeing, and I'll turn this over to George to talk a little bit about some of the division responsibilities that we're seeing when we talk to our customers with regards to IT ops and DevOps, SecOps, and most recently Cloud Ops. George?
Thank you. So I think one of the topics that we want to emphasize here is the fact that it needs a lot more collaboration between departments, right? We have a lot of, especially IT ops, right? They're concerned about the infrastructure. They're the ones that are provisioning all the tools, and then pretty much I'm going to throw it over the fence. I'm going to deploy a WAF, for instance, F5 Advanced WAF, but the SecOps team is going to be the one that's going to manage. My responsibility is to maybe provision it and make sure the uptime is considered defined SLA, right? Then you have DevOps that are highly focused on continuous integration or continuous deployment. They're trying to automate as much as possible. They're highly involved in development process, but also on the operation side as well, right? That's what DevOps actually do. But then you have companies where DevOps and SecOps are working together, or they're totally separated. Now there's a new concept of cloud ops, which are taking care of your cloud operations as well. And there are a lot of teams that need to collaborate a lot more, because what we're seeing very often is that, yes, we are, let's say, receiving files, we expose that functionality as file uploads in our web application, but it's not on the IT for sure. It's not on DevOps, maybe it's not on SecOps, and at the end of the day, there are a lot of things that are falling between the cracks because there's no clear definition who's maintaining what and who is going to be responsible for that piece, right? And what we're trying to achieve is more bring awareness, if you want, that the collaboration is the main one in all these departments. And the fact that we have this kind of, new tools in place that are trying to ease as much as possible the life of all the departments. At the end of the day, yes, we have a lot of automation tools. We need to make sure that they are properly used, right? We're not just provisioning them and throw it over the fence. They're properly configured and everyone is aware what's going on there.
So George, let's just give a quick reminder. If you haven't already voted for our poll question, go ahead and submit your answer now. We'll stop the voting in about 30 seconds or so. So remember, the question is, do you offer file uploads for your web application? So use the voting part on your console there and just go ahead and select your answer, and then we'll reveal the results in just a moment. All right, let's go ahead and stop the voting, and I'm going to go ahead and stop it, and we'll look at our results. So when we look at the results, it looks like more than half of you are offering file uploads on your web application. So that's a little bit higher than I thought, but that's great. And so looks like a small percentage of you saying, no, it's risky, and then another percentage saying you're considering it. Well, for those of you who think it's risky and considering it, that's one of the reasons why we have this partnership. F5 and OPSWAT have this partnership to really address that. And for those of you that are allowing file uploads, really curious just to understand what you're doing to make sure those files are threat-free. So let's talk a little bit more about that. But George, any comments on our poll results before we get into some of the file-borne threats on web applications?
Definitely, I would love to learn more about what are the security practices or what they're using to prevent any malicious file uploads, and also the ones that are considered this way too risky. Maybe if they can expand on that, or write us something in the question area. Why do you think it's risky? And maybe we can answer a couple of your concerns there.
Great.
I think we can. I can start talking a bit more about file-borne threats. At the end of the day, I think this is one of the main topics today, right? The fact that you are going to try to prevent as much as possible receiving malicious files. It can be malicious or not necessarily malicious, but at runtime they can become down the payload that's going to be malicious and so on. So let's talk a bit more what's actually important depending on the teams, right? Because one of the main topics are, I think, a lot of people are afraid about protecting or accepting files because they might actually turn out to be, get something like remote code execution on the server, right? At the end of the day, yes, that's a server-side risk, but that's something that makes the infrastructure and DevOps teams are highly concerned about, but there's a lot more than that, right? Yes, if you're going to be able to exploit the upload vulnerability and you can deploy like a web shell there and you're going to own that machine, then it's a huge risk, right? That's one of the highest risks when it comes to like file upload. A lot of people they're trying to do, I know, someone is using WordPress version 1.2.3, exploits that vulnerability, I'm going to crawl, and whoever is using that one, I'm going to hack them and put some defacement message there. It can be political motivation, it can be just to cause some embarrassment, but then that's almost like, I don't know, kids play, right? I think the one that's very important, like if you're able to do, to leverage a different solution, a cloud solution, maybe even like a well-known provider, to be your CMC or to host your malware, that's something that's a lot more, I don't know, classy, right? At the end of the day, you want to be stealth. Whoever's going to look at like what happened in the incident response teams, and going to check like what happened in the last like 3 months, how we got that in, you're going to see that the traffic is coming from legit sources. Maybe bank123.com was the one delivering the malicious payload. Or in this example, even though it's quiet for some time now, you're using Twitter API, YouTube API, Facebook API, and so on as your CNC. In this example, just the fact you have like hashtag history there is the one that's going to clear the browser history for the victim's machine. And this is something that, for instance, Twitter announced like roughly a month ago, actually. They're deleting over 1 million accounts on a daily basis. Accounts that are responsible for delivering from like fake news, CNC, and so on, which made Twitter's stock to go down a lot, right? At the end of the day, you don't want that kind of bad press around you because your solution is used in malware distribution and so on, right? At the end of the day, this message itself is not malicious, but it's used as a CNC. And then another example from like a month ago is the fact that you can store images. A lot of people are saying, images are not malicious, there's nothing I have to do about images, but this is one example where you use one of the features, one of the, like a very important feature in for an image, the metadata EXIF, where you can actually store information, right? And usually you have information like what the camera you used, what type of lens, what's the resolution, things like that, right? But at the end of the day, you have a section, for instance, this example with user comment, where you can embed the malicious payload. And that's something that you're going to use in, you can store it anywhere. This is just an example that you store it in good user content, but then you can store it in AWS S3, you can store it on Dropbox, regardless. It's not that relevant. At the end of the day, you deploy that image, and if it's not properly processed, you're going to be responsible. Your web application is going to be the one that it's going to distribute that malicious payload. Another example is the one from Proofpoint, again, roughly like a month ago, with active content. You have like a regular PDF in which you have embedded an XML, and this is something that, again, the file itself is not malicious. It's plain, simple PDF, but once you run it, at runtime, it's going to try to get access to PowerShell, ping the CNC server, download the malicious payload, and then it's going to detonate the malicious payload, right? And that's something that, again, regardless on how you're going to try to prevent it, it might not be enough. In this example, maybe a proper sandbox solution might be able to catch it, but at the end of the day, that's easy to evade as well. You're just going to put this one maybe in a doc file as well, and you're going to make the PDF to open the doc, and then you're going to have the same approach. The sandbox solution is not going to detonate the doc file or docx file, and there's nothing going to be malicious from that end, right? So this is the kind of attacks that, even though from our perspective they're not advanced, these are the kind of attacks that are happening for the past 10, 15 years at least, if not more than that, but they're still not properly handled. And maybe that's one of the things that we want to like emphasize. If there's one thing that I want you to learn from this entire presentation is that the way you're trying to sanitize your user input, right? You're afraid about SQL injection, code injection, and so on. You're trying to sanitize as much as possible that user input. Files uploaded to your web application, it's still user input. You need to have the same logic, the same lack of trust of you, if you want, in the content that's being uploaded. Regardless if you have a portal that you collaborate with all your partners, you receive invoices from them. You say like, okay, I just received a PDF, there's nothing malicious there, or I know the source, they're like a registered user, I know who's uploading the file. That's still not good enough. You need to, pretty much our slogan is trust no file, trust no device. You need to make sure you are sanitizing everything. Consider everything to be coming from an unknown source. the file itself is unknown, then you can accept it once it is properly handled and sanitized. And we're going to see that in just a second during the demo. So in this particular example, the file was seen like I said, was announced roughly like a month ago, and you can see still like half of the anti-malware engines are not able to flag it as malicious, right? And it can be still a debate. Is the file itself malicious or not, right? So you cannot rely on just, yes, I'm scanning with one AV, I tick that box, and the file can go in. I think at the end of the day, if you're in the industry of like just ticking boxes, you cannot be, I don't know, you cannot sleep at night being certain that you're safe, right? And another big topic from my perspective is steganography. Even though this is something that's not that prevalent or like frequently seen, just because I believe that nobody's pretty much looking for it, right? As long as you're looking the other side, you're fine, right? This is an example from Wikipedia at the end of the day, where this image has the lower image embedded in it. So think about this one, it's hidden in plain sight in that image. And the way it works is pretty much very simple. You just go to the least significant bit and embed the content there. So think about an image pretty much like layers. So you have like 8 different layers. The most significant one is the first one, where you have the most amount of structure of the image, and the least significant one is the one you'll see most like noise. That layer is responsible for like details, if you want. The fact you can change the least significant bit, your image is going to look exactly the same. You're not going to see a big difference. If you change the most significant bit, though, if you're going to change it from like white to red, you're definitely going to notice that, right? So you're going to try to hide in plain sight, right? And that's one of the strategies that is frequently used just to hide information. And the example with like hiding image in image is one way to do it. But at the end of the day, you can hide anything. You can embed any content you want. It just and there was actually an example with Steganography where Stegasploit was built, and you have both the decoder and the exploit kit inside the same image. So for you, it's going to look like a perfectly normal image, but it can have like malicious code embedded in it. So how are these risks pretty much, or how companies are trying to prevent this kind of risk? At the end of the day, these are the things that we need to make sure that are properly understood, right? A lot of people are saying, yes, we're receiving only images, PDFs, maybe some of them docx, right? But at the end of the day, images and PDFs are the ones that are mostly seen, and those are the ones that nobody's going to block them at the end of the day. And the mindset is still that you don't need anything because those files are not malicious per se. But again, do you need, if you receive, let's say, like resumes, do you need JavaScript in resumes, right? Do you need what kind of active content you need in resumes? And the same thing applies to docx, Excel, and so on. I think a lot of people are just afraid about macros, right? Because that's one of the most prevalent way of like delivering malicious payload. It's the easiest way to write code in productivity documents. But a lot more than just that. You have like OLE objects, ActiveX controls, and so on. Nobody's looking for that one. Yes, you're maybe checking for macros, but it's one out of the 15 things you're supposed to check, right? And the fact that you're just using one AV might not be good enough. And I'm going to show you in the example why that's the case. And maybe one of the best examples is what you've seen in the previous slide with the proof point example, where the file was flagged after 1 month only by like half of the anti-malware engines. And evasion in sandbox is a huge topic, right? Malware armoring and so on. And the example here is like how frequently that's seen and how easy it is to evade the dynamic analysis solution. And that's something that you cannot rely on. So think about this way. From my perspective, it's yes, I'm expecting to receive files from my partners, collaborators, and so on, right? At the end of the day, maybe not my web application is going to be the one that's vulnerable because I'm not going to run the files. They're going to be pretty much stored in, let's say, an S3 bucket, right? But the consumer of my web application, the end user, is the one that might actually be attacked, right? If I'm concerned about, let's say, like reflected cross-site scripting, that the end users might actually be affected, exactly the same thing will apply for this file uploads, right? They're going to receive the files from your web application. That's the delivery mechanism. And they're going to be infected even though there was not necessarily a risk for your server side. Now, one of the things I kept mentioning is the fact you need to sanitize your user input, right? And what we propose is one technology that we call data sanitization. Gartner calls it content disarmament and construction. Like in 2 words, it's very easy to picture like you have like a productivity document, you're looking at that one and you're trying to remove any embedded object that might drive a malicious behavior. So think about like any active content in that productivity document that might drive that malicious behavior. Those are the objects that are removed from. It's going to receive like a rebuild document, brand new one with all the content, usability is going to be maintained, I don't know, animations in PowerPoint and things like that, right? So those are the kind of things that you need to consider. At the end of the day, yes, there are going to be some things that are going to be removed from the productivity document, but at the end of the day, you're reducing, or even though I think you're actually eliminating the human risk out of the equation, right? The fact that whoever's going to open that productivity document, it's going to be threat-free from that perspective. The question is more towards like the use, depending on the use case, which are the active content that you need, or like which are the features that productivity document you actually need for you to actually properly do your job, right? Maybe Excel with macros enabled, it's mandatory in some of the use cases, but most of them, you don't need them. Again, if you're having a portal where people are sending you invoices via PDFs, you don't need JavaScript embedded, right? If you receive resumes, you don't need macros enabled, or all the objects, or things like that. So the solution we propose is called MetaDefender, and we are pretty much receiving one file, and based on the true file type, we're going to be able to analyze it. And the way we analyze it is first, we're checking with multiple anti-malware engines. We are able to deploy over 30 anti-malware engines, and if the file itself is malicious, we're just going to block it there. If it's not malicious in the productivity file that we can actually sanitize, we're going to sanitize, and then user can consume the sanitized copy. Now, with that in mind, you can, depending on the policy defined, you can store the original file. Maybe you want to perform a lot more analysis if it's needed, things like that. But at the end of the day, the user impact is going to be very low. It's going to be, the entire process takes less than a second, so it's close to like real time. That's why this partnership with F5 works so well, because we're able to deploy this solution right next to the F5 Advanced WAF, and through an ICAP integration, we're going to be able to sanitize, analyze, and sanitize the content before it touches your web application. As I was trying to explain, we have this integration from MetaDefender ICAP Server. So the way it works, any file that goes through F5 is be redirected to MetaDefender, which is going to do the analysis and also the sanitization. I think that one thing that it's very important to mention is the fact that if people are trying to upload malicious files to you, you want to know that, right? And this is where having multiple anti-malware engines is going to help you a lot more, because you're going to be able to get close to that 100% of threats, right? So the more engines you add, the detection ratio is going to be. Again, this is static analysis. This is something that's done within like hundreds of milliseconds. The fact that you're also doing the sanitization, this is another step where you can be certain that any document that's going to go inside your web application, or can be stored by your web application, is threat-free. One of the topics here, the fact that we have that integration with the ICAP server, with F5 Advanced WAF. The reason we are pushing hard on the Advanced WAF is because, as Mark mentioned, actually, a lot of people are asking like, okay, we have file upload, how do we handle that? We are seeing a lot of traction in this area. That's why we're trying to position this joint solution mostly for the Advanced WAF. But the same integration applies for all the F5 solutions that are supporting ICAP, right? At the end of the day, for MetaDefender, it's not that relevant if that file is coming from the Advanced WAF, from the LTM, or from the SSL orchestrator. Even though all of them are sending us files, for us it's not important what's the use case or how that files are being managed before and after the analysis. Our solution does the analysis per se, and then F5 is going to decide what to do next. Now it's time for demo. Let me quickly share my screen. Hopefully this is going to work. Come on. Okay.
All right, George, we see it.
Perfect. So let me go ahead and log in. We have like two different deployments. This is one of the solutions that OWASP lists on their list of tools for known vulnerable web applications. The way its original developer, Bjorn Kimnich, was actually presented was like it's the best vulnerable web application, right? It's full of web vulnerabilities. Everything in the OWASP top 10, you can actually POC it using this application. A lot of like competitions like Capture the Flag and so on are based on this one as well. So I'm trying to show you like how easy it is to deploy F5 next and MetaDefender next to it and put it in front of the web application without changing anything, right? So or like changing anything on the web app side. And that's the important part here. I have like direct access to the web application, and then we have an F5 ASM and the MetaDefender try to set up in front of it. So I'm going to try to go to the virtual server afterwards and do a similar demo. So for instance, in this case, if I'm going to try to log in, I'm going to try it on SQL injection here. As you can see, it's easy to log in. And not only that it's easy to log in, I'm able to log in as an admin as well, right? And this is like the easiest thing to do ever. And if I'm able to upload it as well, I'm going to try to file a complaint here. And they're accepting invoices. I'm uploading the file. They have this functionality where I made a small change. All the files I'm uploading, they're written in this FTP server. Once I'm uploading the file, I want to show you like what the file actually does. And okay, so I open it, and this is like a PDF with a lot of rich content, right? And again, from my perspective, there are like a lot of productivity files that are trying to add a lot of functionalities that are gonna be are trying to expose as much of rich content as possible, so you can create amazing things. But at the end of the day, the more you can create, a lot of those features are actually exploited by the threat actors, right? And in this example, you can see I'm able to embed a Flash file here, a SWIFT file. At the end, it's perfectly legit. Embed a font, embed an image that, in theory, like it says here, has hidden content. Something close to Steganography, right? I have embedded content that you're not able to see. For you, looks, or like for us, looks exactly like a regular image. Then I have this file as well, which is embedded. This is one way to hide the malicious payload, right? I'm embedding a docx file. When I'm opening it, I'm going to have a lot more rich content there as well. As you see, again, the image with the hidden content, the PuTTY file, which is like all the objects as well, and so on. So when I'm closing this one, you can see we have JavaScript running in the background as well. This is something, again, looks like a perfectly normal PDF. You have no idea what's running behind the scenes, and this is one of the things that your end user, the consumer of your web application, will going to be targeted at runtime. So let's try to do the same thing, but once we're using the F5 MetaDefender put side by side. And for that, I'm going to try again the same thing. I'm going to try to log in using the same SQL query. And you see that I'm receiving an error. Let me show you one thing actually quickly. I'll try to log in again. And during the login, you'll see the response. It's served by the F5, right? And this is something that F5 catches that request. It's invalid, so it's going to respond with a direct error. And I'll show you that on the F5 configuration in just 1 second. I think the most important part here is that, again, the application itself is still vulnerable, but the fact that you put the WAF in front of it, it's able to catch that and protect you from this kind of like small attacks. But they're not that small actually, but yeah. So let me go ahead and actually log in. And upload the same file again. Okay. Again, I'm going to FTP. As you can see, now the files that's been uploaded is actually invoice sanitized by MetaDefender. This is a configuration in the product just to show that you have the flexibility to name whatever you want the sanitized files, but also to emphasize the fact the file was sanitized for the demo. So let's say this one. And once I open it, as you can see, there's no attachment on the left side. The Swift file was removed as well. And the image, the text is still there with hidden content, but the image was also sanitized. And I'm going to show you how that works in 1 minute as well. But also the embedded font is still there. So from a usability perspective, you still have some of the rich content, but the one that might drive that misbehavior, the one that's actually active content was stripped off. And when I close, there's no JavaScript running, right? Another example I want to show you quickly is the fact that I can upload a resume. And this is like the kind of attacks that were frequently seen. For instance, like last year, the nuclear industry was, there was a data breach in the nuclear industry where people just sent resumes as attachments, and that's how they actually got in. So let's say we upload this resume, like a normal docx file. I'm uploading it directly to the web application. And when I open it, you'll see there's a lot more content here, right? And I still have the same image. There's a remote image that hasn't been loaded. Once I enable editing, it's going to retrieve also the remote image here, but I also have like a DDA attack as well. As you can see, activity controls and so on, all objects. One thing, as I mentioned, that I'm going to show you about the document, or like the image actually. Let's quickly save this one as a HTML file. So I can have access directly to the image. So if we go into images, I think it's image 2. Let's open this one. Again, the image with the San Francisco Bridge. Let's rename it as a zip file. And when I open it, looks like we have a PDF inside of it. So that's 160. When I open the PDF, again, it's like normal PDF, nothing special about it, but I'm able easily to hide information inside an image. Once again, images, it's like the easiest way for you is to have a mix of these productivity files, right? You have like an image embedded in a document, which is embedded in PDF, which can be embedded, I don't know, in an Excel file or things like that. And there's some that's going to easily bypass like conventional way of like handling these kind of files. Especially when the mindset is that those productivity files are not going to be malicious. And we're going to try actually, let's try to upload this resume using MetaDefender and F5 as well. When I'm trying to do that, behind the scene again, F5 is going to send the files to MetaDefender. MetaDefender is going to do the static analysis, and then it's going to also sanitize it if it passes the static analysis. So when I go here, I'll see that the sanitized file is not here. This is the copy I uploaded directly to the web app. So if we go actually to the ICAP server and we're looking at the ICAP history, this one is the one that's infected. The file was actually blocked because the file itself is malicious. And you see here, this is the resume I tried to upload. And originally, and I think this is a very important point, if you scan the file as it is, only 1 of 8 engines is considered malicious. If you use the same approach I did with the handling the docx file as an archive, then you get a lot more traction. You see like 3 out of 8 engines are actually flagging this as malicious. And the file that's actually malicious is this one, right? And there's some that MetaDefender is going to automatically block and can serve like a blog page, or it can serve, I don't know, different content that you can define. That's a customizable feature there. Actually, I can show you that. So once the file is being, the response we get is file blocked directly from MetaDefender. right? This is the blocked page that MetaDefender serves by default, but this is something you can customize and use it in your web application response and so on. Anyway, so what I want to show you quickly is how easy it is to integrate these together, right? So we have the F5 solution where I think quickly just to show you, we have a couple of policies defined for the WAF part. So we have this policy, and the response page, this is something that I showed you previously, the fact that the response from the WAF was the one that was like, okay, the request was rejected, here's your contact of your admin, here's your ticket, right? That's the default configuration from F5, but what I want to show you is the fact that we have an IAP template, and it's like very easy just to import it. It's on our GitHub account. I've imported here, but it's pretty much straightforward. Just import and you'll have it in your list, and then go to application services and just hit create. Select MetaDefender ICAP from the list. All you have to specify is the name of your profiles, and then like the IP where MetaDefender can be reached, right? And this can be like internal IP, or it can be actually I don't know, over the public net and so on. At the end of the day, as long as F5 can reach it, it's perfect. Our recommendation is to deploy it right next to F5. This will going to reduce a lot of the latency, but also you don't want to expose these ones to IP over the internet necessarily. Maybe you want to put it like a more private subnet. Sorry, if you're going to deploy it in the cloud. Now, how the network map actually looks like. We have the MetaDefender ICAP pool with all the profiles and everything that was built by the IAP template. So there's no work you have to do on that side. And we have the virtual server as well. And on the virtual server, all you have to do is just go to Advanced and select the request at that profile if you want to protect from file uploads. But if you also want to get and sanitize the files on your way when you're downloading them, you can enable it here as well. So both profiles are going to be generated by the IAP template. You have access to both of them. Just hit update, and that's it. I think that's most of the demo that I was planning to do. Feel free to ask any questions, and I'm going to share the screen again if there's anything else that you'd like to see on this one. Okay. One of the things that we would like to discuss here is that this joint solution or the most important part of this joint solution is, yes, it goes through ICAP, but I think the most important part there is that everything that's through ICAP is going to be automatically supported by MetaDefender. As long as the files are coming via ICAP, there's no change you have to do on your web app side, right? No integration through MetaDefender to use the same rich functionality sets like multi-scanning and sanitization. We're soon going to release a DLP functionality that's going to automatically be inherited through the ICAP integration. Otherwise, everything that I showed you in MetaDefender, it's REST API based, right? So you can do REST API integration, but that means that you have to go and change your web application to handle all those new requests or new functionality, new fields in the JSON response and so on. Right. So we have like a very streamlined integration with F5. You can deploy this one without touching your web application. And that's not something that's actually trivial to do, and that's not something you have to go through your web team, build the integration, test it, put it in POC, run it for a couple of months, things like that, right? It goes very smoothly and very fast. The time to market is like very fast. Like there's a very short period of time where you're from like POC to actually run production. Okay. Mark, is there anything that you want to add to this one?
No, hey, great demo and very impressive. This is something that a lot of our F5 customers have been asking about, and they have a tremendous amount of interest in how they can protect files that are being uploaded through web applications. And this is the solution that we recommend to them because it really is very effective, and as George mentioned, deploys rapidly with F5. So why don't we go ahead and get to our QA. We are almost out of time here, and there's a couple of questions that came through. One of the questions was about CPE credits and certification or credits for this, and pleased to announce that OPSWAT will be offering 2 CPE credits for this webinar, and we will go ahead and send you evidence in a follow-up email for all attendees, so it's great news there. We've got a few other questions that we'll get to. One of the questions is, do I have to have big IP LTM to get F5's Advanced WAF? And the answer to that is no, you don't. So Advanced WAF can be an add-on if you already have the big IP LTM, or if you want to buy just the Advanced WAF component, and many of our customers do, that's an option as well. In fact, that is a standalone offer, or it can be as an add-on to your existing F5. Let's see, there's a couple other questions we want to get to. Here, one of them is, I have F5 Advanced WAF, why do I need OPSWAT? Well, hopefully after going through and hearing what George had to say, we've answered that question. But F5 does a great job with our WAF protecting against threats against the application itself, but you really need the OPSWAT capability to do that deep inspection of the content that is being uploaded. And George, you want to say a couple of words on that?
Right. I think both solutions are doing a great job in their own field, right? And at the end of the day, you have a lot of the security stack in any organization. They have like a lot of solutions that are highly focused on their own areas, right? F5 is doing an amazing job on the Advanced WAF with DDoS protection, botnet, and OWASP top 10. But at the end of the day, file scanning and actually like content inspection is not one of the topics that F5 or WAF market in general are heavily focused on, right? And that's why we have to come in. If you have that functionality where people are sending you files, you should make sure that, again, check everything. Don't rely on the fact you have any kind of like image or PDF, or you trust the source of the file.
Okay, one more question, and then we'll move to the end here. And the question is, can you use the information from a WAF to enable web developers to fix vulnerabilities? And certainly the answer to that is yes. The Advanced WAF provides a lot of details in the logs as far as what types of attacks or threats were blocked. So there's a lot of information there, but I'd recommend, though, if this is really what you want to do, to use one of the scanning tools. There's a number of them out there, like from White Hat or even IBM AppScan, and there's a number of tools that can do dynamic scanning of web applications that produce some really great reports that might be a little bit more useful to your web application developers. Okay, so a couple of things to leave you with. One, I want to tell you about F5 Labs. If you haven't heard of F5 Labs, F5 Labs is the global research division of F5. We have a number of really great reports that are out there today. We just released a report on 2018 application security. It really goes in depth, explaining a lot of the different attacks against applications, analyzing years of data of recent attacks, and I think you'll find it really interesting, really in depth, whether you are a security pro or just learning about this. All of the attacks and attack types are explained in great detail, as well as some of the history of these attacks. So F5 Labs publishes new information twice a week, and you can sign up for it, and every Monday you'll get a notification and tell you what's new. So I encourage you, if you haven't looked at F5 Labs, go ahead and take a look, and that would be something that might be of interest to you. And I really want to thank you for your time, and I know we went right to the end here, but if you'd like to learn a little bit more about what George and I discussed today, I encourage you to check out F5.com/OPSWAT to learn a little bit more about the joint solution. Also check out the OPSWAT website, and feel free to follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. We have lots of information from our companies that are pushed out there fairly often, so there's a lot of great information for you so you can stay up to date on what we're doing. And George, any final words?
Just a huge thank you for everybody. Thank you very much for taking the time and listen to both of us, especially me, because I love to talk a lot. So I hope you enjoy it. Feel free to reach out. You have some contact information there as well. Just shoot us an email or reach out to us directly, and more than happy to assist with any questions. Like I said, I'm very curious to see which are the reasons that you guys, the reason why you don't want to deploy a file-up functionality that's too risky. Maybe you can shoot us an email and let us know a couple more details there. Thank you.
Great, and thanks again. We really appreciate you attending. And remember to go ahead and give us your feedback. You have that ability within the BrightTalk console. Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate your time today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.